very few names in entertainment history that transcend their field, echoing across generations not just for what they did, but for how they made us feel. Robin Williams is one of those rare souls. He wasn't merely a comedian or an actor. He was a force of energy, a human tempest whose words and gestures could lift a weary heart into the clouds or unravel a tear from the hardest face. His legacy is stitched into the very fabric of our collective memory. From the impish genie in Aladdin to the inspiring teacher in Dead Poet Society, the tender psychologist in Good Will Hunting, and the wild-hearted adventurer in Jumanji. Through each role, Robin didn't just act, he transformed. But isn't that the paradox of brilliance? That behind the loudest laughter often lies the deepest silence? As the world roared with joy at Robin's performances, few could imagine the internal battles he waged behind the curtain. And now, a successful automobile executive and his mother, a former model, provided him with every material comfort imaginable. There were grand homes, private schools, and the outward appearances of an idyllic life. Yet within those luxurious walls, the warmth of consistent love and emotional connection was painfully absent. When his family relocated to the exclusive neighborhood of Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, Robin found himself in a mansion filled with polished surfaces, glittering chandeliers, and hired help, but starved of what he craved most: presence. His father, though financially successful, was emotionally remote, and his mother, warm and intelligent, was often away, immersed in her own world. Robin once reflected that the perfect child in their household was one who was seen but not heard. And so, within that vacuum of affection, he made a discovery that would shape the rest of his life. He realized that laughter could be currency, that if he could summon a smile from his mother, the cold house would, for a moment, feel alive. That flicker of attention, that glimmer of joy, became his lifeline. He began to perform, not on a stage, but in the echoing hallways of home. His first role was not in front of cameras, but before the eyes of a mother who would light up, even briefly, when he made her laugh. That was how the boy who would one day make the world laugh learned to earn love, not with stillness, but with spectacle. One particular memory left an indelible mark. As a boy, Robin watched his emotionally reserved father burst into laughter while watching the comedian Jonathan Winters on TV. But in how pain can be alchemized into joy, into healing, into legacy. As Robin Williams stepped out of the shadows of his childhood, the world of performance became not just a passion, but a place of survival. It wasn't about applause at first. It was about feeling alive, about filling the silence that had shaped his early years. The stage offered more than an audience. It offered the warmth of presence that had so often been missing from his home. The moment the laughter began, so too did a kind of healing. In the 1970s, Robin took a monumental leap. He was accepted into the prestigious Juilliard School in New York, a sanctuary for artistic brilliance. But even there, among the world's most promising young performers, he stood apart, not just because of his raw talent, but because of the restless storm that lived within him. While classmates like Christopher Reeve approached their craft with precision and quiet discipline, Robin erupted with untamable energy. Dozens of voices, swirling impressions, scenes made up on the spot. He didn't just act, he exploded. John Houseman, one of Juilliard's most respected instructors, recognized both the brilliance and the chaos. Robin's talent was undeniable, but it refused to be boxed in. He was the kind of genius that made even genius seem inadequate. And yet, with that genius came isolation. In a room full of artists, Robin sometimes felt like a misfit once again, his creativity too loud, too fast, too much for the calm expectations of the Academy. But instead of shrinking back, he chose to lean into the very spark that made him different. That spark carried him to Los Angeles, where the smoky comedy clubs of the mid-1970s became his new classroom. Every night, he stood under the heat of stage lights, facing a crowd of strangers, trying to fill the space between himself and the world. Silence was the enemy. A quiet audience wasn't just a professional setback. It was a haunting echo of the isolation he had grown up with. So Robin fought it the only way he knew how, with a storm of characters, a hurricane of improvisation that left audiences breathless and amazed. He didn't just perform, he transformed. He would become 3 different people in one conversation, invent an entire universe in the span of 5 minutes, switch voices mid-sentence. And yet, beneath the frenzy was a deep human need to be seen, to be valued. Every laugh was a confirmation that he mattered. Then, in 1978, something extraordinary happened. A quirky guest appearance on Happy Days turned into a cultural phenomenon. The producers saw something extraordinary in Robin and cast him as Mork, the alien from Mork, in Mork and Mindy. In what felt like an instant, the struggling comedian became a household name. His face appeared in living rooms across America, his voice quoted in playgrounds, his catchphrases etched into pop culture. But the role was more than just a breakout opportunity. It was in many ways a reflection of Robin himself. Mork was an outsider, curious, bizarre, and yearning to understand the world around him. He didn't quite fit, but he never stopped trying to connect. He used humor to navigate confusion, love to overcome awkwardness, and wonder to make sense of the unfamiliar. Robin brought a raw, vulnerable truth to the character, one that audiences subconsciously recognized. This wasn't just comedy. It was a confession. He later admitted that one of the hardest things about success was the expectation that he always had to be funny, even when the inside of him had gone quiet. Behind the public persona was a man wrestling with doubt, exhaustion, and the fear that if he stopped performing, the love might disappear. In the 1980s, Robin pushed himself to even greater heights. His stand-up comedy evolved into something revolutionary. His HBO specials weren't just entertainment. They were electric, unscripted, explosive, emotionally raw. He would dance across the stage like a man possessed, embodying character after character with precision and intensity. Audiences howled, critics raved. But when the lights dimmed and the crowd went home, Robin often felt hollow. "It's like being possessed," he once said. "You come off stage and wonder who you really are." That quote, simple yet searing, exposed a truth many performers never speak aloud. When the laughter fades, what's left? In 1987, the world saw a different side of Robin in Good Morning, Vietnam. His performance as Adrian Cronauer wasn't just a comedic showcase. It was layered with humanity. He riffed and joked, yes, but beneath the humor was an aching sincerity. The absurdity of war, the isolation of being a voice in chaos. It all mirrored Robin's own experience. The Academy nominated him for an Oscar, but more importantly, audiences began to see that Robin's gift wasn't just comedy. It was connection. 2 years later, in Dead Poets Society, he delivered one of the most iconic performances of his career. As Mr. John Keating, he inspired a generation to seize the day, to think for themselves, to live deliberately. The irony, of course, was that Robin had once sat in that very back row, the boy desperate to be seen. Now he stood at the front of the class, a beacon for those who felt invisible. His ability to move between laughter and heartbreak, comedy and sincerity, was unmatched. At 41, he became Peter Pan in Hook, reclaiming the childhood wonder he had lost too soon. At 42, he voiced the genie in Aladdin, unleashing his imagination with glorious freedom. For a moment, it seemed he had found a space where his madness could run free without hurting anyone, only bringing joy. But perhaps the most profound performance came at 46, in Good Will Hunting. As Sean Maguire, Robin set aside the characters, the wild energy, the voices. He sat still. He spoke quietly. His words were simple but drenched in truth. That monologue about love, pain, and loss wasn't just acting, it was lived experience. The Academy handed him the Oscar, but for viewers around the world, it was something more. It was comfort, a moment of recognition, a reminder that someone out there understood. And yet, through all this triumph, an old truth remained. Success didn't erase the wounds of the past. It amplified them. The applause was deafening, But the silence between ovations was louder. The very qualities that made Robin beloved, his generosity, his boundless energy, his vulnerability, were also what made him fragile. And as his fame soared, the cost of maintaining it became heavier. Still, Robin never gave up on others. He kept giving. Every joke, every role, every interview was a thread of light he offered to a world that, like him, he married Valerie Velarde. To the public, it was the perfect picture: a young couple in love, a rising career, a future bright with endless possibilities. The man who could make the world laugh wasn't always there when his own son needed to laugh, or simply be held. It's a paradox many performers face, and desperate for grounding. With Marcia, there was a renewed hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, stability could be found. Together, they welcomed 2 children, Zelda, born in 1989, and Cody. In 1991, Robin, now entering his 40s, embraced fatherhood with a renewed sense of purpose. He once said, "Being a father is the best thing I will ever do." And he meant it. In those early years, when tiny hands reached for him, when baby laughter filled the rooms, Robin basked in the glow. These were not audiences. These were not fans. These were his children, his chance to rewrite his own story. He knelt on the floor, created voices only his kids would hear, spun bedtime stories out of pure imagination. In those moments, the storm of performance quieted. He was not Robin Williams, the icon. He was just Dad, and that identity, above all others, was the one he cherished most. But once again, life had its own script. As Zelda and Cody grew, so too did Hollywood's hunger for Robin. Between 1989 and 1997, he delivered some of his most iconic performances: Dead Poets Society, Hook, Aladdin, Mrs. Doubtfire, Good Will Hunting. He was everywhere, ubiquitous, unstoppable, except where he was needed most. Marcia, though understanding and enduring, felt the slow erosion of absence. Being married to Robin meant sharing him with the entire world. Zelda would later recall that her childhood felt like it came in flashes, brief. Beautiful moments stolen between filming schedules and worldwide tours. And Cody, too, would grow up in a home filled with love, but often without the man who gave it. The most painful irony was this: Robin never stopped loving. In fact, he may have loved too much, scattering himself in all directions, trying to give to the world, to fans, to friends, to his children. But even love, when divided too many ways, can become thin. By 2010, after more than 2 decades together, Robin and Marcia divorced. It was quiet, solemn, and deeply painful. Not because the love had vanished, but because it couldn't hold up against the demands of the life he had built. The settlement was significant, reportedly $30 million, but the true loss wasn't financial. It was emotional. For Robin, the failure wasn't about fame or career. It was about family. The one role he valued most, being a husband, being a father, was the one he found slipping through his hands again. And yet, even in that heartbreak, he never stopped trying, never stopped showing up when he could, never stopped reaching for the simple moments that made life feel real. Because behind all the voices, the characters, the chaos, Robin was still that little boy waiting in a big, empty house. Only now, he was the father his own children waited for. By the time Robin Williams turned 60, he had already lived several lifetimes in one. He was no longer just the man with 1,000 voices. He had become a cultural fixture. His name alone was enough to summon smiles. His face a symbol of joy, his voice an echo of comfort. He was, in every sense, a legend. But what Robin longed for in those later years was not more success. It wasn't more roles or more awards. It was something far simpler: peace. And perhaps at long last, he had found a glimpse of it. In 2011, he married Susan Schneider, a graphic designer far removed from the industry that had consumed so much of his life. With her, Robin seemed different, calmer, more grounded. Friends described their time together in quiet, almost sacred terms. They would walk hand in hand through the streets of Marin County, share slow dinners, laugh over nothing. Susan later said, "He made me laugh every single day." And this time, it wasn't a performance. It was just Robin, just a man finally letting go of the need to be everything for everyone. For a while, life felt still, safe. He found joy in painting, in biking, in small things. He no longer chased the roar of a crowd, because finally, there was someone who cherished his silence as much as his spark. Their marriage wasn't flashy. It wasn't built on red carpets or headlines. It was built on presence. And for a man who had spent a lifetime trying to be seen, that was the greatest gift of all. But in 2013, subtle changes began to appear. So small at first, they were almost imperceptible. Robin, the man who once bounced across stages with electric energy, began to slow. He grew restless. He had no name for it, no to hold him up, no way to fight what he couldn't see. The man who had once used his mind as a limitless canvas was now haunted by shadows he couldn't explain. Susan watched helplessly as the man she loved slipped slowly into confusion. There were days he'd pace the house, overwhelmed by noises only he seemed to hear. He grew anxious, paranoid, easily startled. His concentration evaporated. His joy flickered. The stage, once his sanctuary, now felt foreign. He turned down opportunities to perform, something previously unimaginable. When his friend Eric Idle invited him to appear at the Monty Python reunion, Robin declined. "I want to," he said softly, "but I just can't be on stage." Eric later understood what that moment truly was. A farewell, not to the public, but to the part of Robin that had always kept the spark burning. Behind closed doors, how could someone who gave so much light be lost to such darkness? But Susan knew that wasn't the full story. In the months following his passing, she refused to accept the easy narrative. She knew what she had witnessed: the decline, the confusion, the terror. And when the autopsy came back, it revealed something most had never even heard of: Lewy Body Dementia, a neurodegenerative disorder. Lewy Body Dementia is often misdiagnosed. It mimics symptoms of Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, anxiety, depression, and paranoia all at once. It doesn't just rob a person of memory. It steals their sense of reality, their perception, their identity. It is in every sense a silent and devastating intruder. Robin hadn't lost hope. He hadn't surrendered. He had been fighting an invisible war against an enemy no one recognized. Susan later said, "It wasn't depression that took Robin from us. It was Lewy Body Dementia." Not yet knowing that the voice behind the magic was once a boy who just wanted to be seen. It lives in the quiet sobs of students standing on desks after watching Dead Poets Society, feeling, perhaps for the first time, that someone believed in their voice. It lives in the warmth of families gathered on a rainy evening, watching Mrs. Doubtfire, finding comfort in the messy, beautiful imperfections of love. Robin Williams didn't just act in films. He became part of the stories we tell ourselves about joy, about sorrow, about resilience. What made him unforgettable was not just his talent, but his vulnerability. The way he wore his heart just beneath the laughter. The way he reached out, not only as a performer, but as a person, through every joke, every gesture, every moment on screen. And in that reaching, he offered something rare: permission to feel, to laugh loudly, to cry openly, to be fragile, to be human. His life, filled with dizzying highs and aching lows, reminds us that success is never armor. Fame is not a shield. Applause may fill a room. It is often said that a person's true legacy isn't in the headlines or the trophies, but in the quiet ways their spirit lingers, in the lives they've touched, in the stories we continue to tell. And Robin's spirit lingers everywhere. In every child who learns that it's okay to be different. In every adult who finally allows themselves to feel what they've long buried. In every broken person who finds hope in the most unexpected place. A line from a movie, a voice on a screen, a memory that arrives just when they need it most. Robin's life, in all its brilliance and fragility, reminds us that kindness is never wasted. That vulnerability is not weakness, but courage. And that the simple act of being present, truly, fully present, can be the greatest gift we offer each other. Susan once said, "I lost my husband and best friend, while the world lost one of its most beloved artists and beautiful human beings." In that single sentence lies the dual truth of Robin's legacy. He belonged to millions, but he also belonged to a few. And the pain of losing him was felt on both an epic and deeply personal scale. But even in death, he gave. He gave awareness to a misunderstood disease. He gave inspiration to those battling invisible struggles. He gave the world a reminder that love matters more than fame. And that is the legacy that matters most.